Walk us through any of your thinking when it comes to Uber, which is down today, but has been an outperformer this year.
Yeah, I think there's three parts of Uber that are important to discuss. The ride-sharing part, they're dominant. They have won. They beat Lyft. They beat all their global competitors pretty much, except in China. And they're able to have pricing power, and they're able to be a destination for drivers because there's always a shortage of supply for drivers. So they're really doing well there and printing money. Uber Eats, they have a real serious competitor in DoorDash. And that's what I think this Toast deal is about. It's how do they get an advantage on food delivery? Because that's a huge part of their business. They're still number 2 in the US behind DoorDash. And finally, the autonomous vehicle disruption potential and why you saw the stock get hit today because Waymo announced that they were launching in other markets. That continues to be a long-term threat to Uber, just the existence of an autonomous vehicle network run by somewhere else where you don't have to pay for the cost of a driver. And I think that'll kind of loom over the company for a while, but I think they're doing the right thing by doing partnerships with companies like Waymo and other autonomous vehicle providers. And that's the best they can do.
Now, Emil, I want to ask you about, there were some rumblings earlier this year, or recently actually, about Uber and Expedia. Now, there seems to be, that we haven't heard much on that front. When you think about Uber and its expansion, you just talked about the 3 areas that it's in. We obviously know the ride sharing has been its bread and butter for a long time. They expanded in the Uber Eats category, which has been great. Sure, DoorDash may be ahead of them, but that's another expansion category. But then, of course, we have the automation, robo-taxis that could be a little bit of a threat. Do you see the potential for some M&A activity, especially when you think about 2025 into 2026, when it comes to Uber, especially when you think about the history of where Dara came from before coming to Uber?
Yeah, I hope that Expedia rumor wasn't true because I don't think that would make a lot of sense for Uber, because that's, if you think about what Expedia is, you're booking a vacation once or twice a year. So it's not an everyday use case. And the thing about food delivery and ride sharing, you can use it every day, multiple times a week. So I don't know how it fits. I do think the one M&A idea I like for 2025, and I have no sort of knowledge about anything here, but Instacart grocery delivery that you do weekly or even multiple times a week, has a driver delivery network, has a huge share of wallet. Like between the amount of money a household spends on food delivery, ride sharing, and grocery delivery, that's a big set of categories and fits nicely within the Uber business. So I hope they look at it, and it's not that expensive relative to Uber's market cap.
Okay, and I'm curious, you mentioned some of its competition, Instacart, I imagine would be competition, but also like an interesting partnership. I think that's always an interesting alignment between these two companies. But with saturation in this market, I mean, as anyone knows, you log into your phone, there's 100 of these apps now. And the delivery apps, there's only a few ride-hailing apps, truly. But how does consolidation in this space work? I mean, could we see Uber become more of an interest in M&A, or are we expecting a lot more of just the dominant players continuing to eat a lot of this market share?
I think Uber's own grocery delivery operation, which is their competitor to Instacart, is very small. So the M&A idea would be that Instacart and Uber merge. It's just an idea. And they put it under the Uber loyalty program. People sort of forget that one of the reasons DoorDash got really big was because of DashPass, their sort of loyalty program that reduced delivery costs if you were a consistent customer. Uber now has, if they have multiple products, ride sharing, food delivery, if they add grocery to that in an overall loyalty program, that could be a pretty compelling suite of offerings for anyone who wants to be a broad Uber customer.
And I think that's a great point too. And we both like that idea.
I think that's a great idea. Because like Jenny, speaking as a customer, I use Uber, I use Uber Eats, I've done the Uber One thing, I think that's the loyalty thing, and sometimes I've toyed with, okay, do I really need this? Should I drop it? But if you add that element to your point about the suggestion about adding this loyalty piece of expanding the grocery along with the restaurant delivery, it makes a better proposition for consumers, especially when you think about how consumers now are so used to subscription services with just about every company that we're working with, whether it's grocery or food delivery. Any final thoughts about how we should be looking at Uber through the year, especially when you think think about how the share price has been. It is the leader when it comes to the space of comparing it to, say, Lyft, but it is, it's not outperforming the S&P 500 this year.
Yeah, look, you remember Uber went public at $45 a share in 2019, and then it spent a long time in the 30s. And now it's at 65, 70, 75, depending on sort of the newsiness of what's happening in the autonomous vehicle world. So it's come a long way since going public. And it hit $86, I believe, in November. So it really did have a nice peak. And I think, you had these newsy moments where Waymo is launching something and the stock price get hits, but I don't think that'll be something that sticks. I think you'll see in Q1 a sort of nice recovery back into the 70s and maybe even the 80s because their profits are coming faster than they predicted a couple of years ago. Dara talked about getting to $5 billion in free cash flow, I think by 26 or 27, and he's gonna beat that while growing his market share, hopefully in food delivery and doing something strategic in grocery delivery, perhaps.
And I do think this grocery delivery thing, once you know it to be tried and true in your life. It's hard to go back. So
you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it.
You truly cannot unsee it and appreciate it. Great conversation. Emil Michael, appreciate all that insight on Uber, the chairman and CEO of DPCM, as well as the former chief business officer at Uber.